Welcome to the Asian Connection Mortgage Podcast, where we connect Asian Canadians together to talk about anything related to real estate, mortgages, and finances, based out of Vancouver. Our host is John Lee, mortgage broker with Arise Mortgage. Grab a bubble tea and enjoy the episode.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Asian Connection Mortgage Podcast. Today, I have a special guest, Joee Tran. She is a financial professional from World Financial Group. How's it going, Joee?
Going good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Perhaps before we start, just kind of share with us a little bit about yourself, how you got into becoming a financial professional.
That's actually pretty funny because you know what? I think growing up, I knew for sure there were like a few things I definitely didn't want to get into. One was to teach. Another one was finance and or business. And then anything to do with physics. So I actually went a completely different route originally. It was all sciences, molecular biology, biochemistry. And I mean, obviously that didn't pan out, but I became a client because I just wanted to learn about how money works in general, even though I'm born here in Canada. I think one of the things is like your parents can only teach you so much, and the schools don't teach you about money. So the easiest thing that my mom said was like, okay, Joey, when you start working, save money. And it was so easy for me because I'm super logical. So she was like, save money, save. I have a savings account. That's where my money is gonna go. And I thought that's what, I thought that's what saving money meant. So, I had goals of, buying a house and retirement, but all I did was just keep putting my money in, which was a good habit. And then I realized, oh shoot, my money is not actually the same as it was like 10 years ago. So buying a house is also not the same as it's going to be 10 years ago. And so that's when I really had to think about, okay, well, how can I better understand, how to make my money work harder? And I think that's what brought me into this industry. And I saw that there were a lot more opportunities for me here rather than working at a 9 to 5. And so that's sort of what brought me into finance and how I met you.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because your story, I'm sure, can resonate with lots of listeners as well. Because, yeah, saving money, that's exactly it. You got your checking account, savings account. And, banks will actually encourage you to do it because they have this like, you don't have to do it by yourself. We could do it automatically for you.
Yeah.
Like once a month, and you'll just transfer, and you're like, yeah, you're like,
I like this.
feeling that you're so rich, right? But then, your savings account only kind of gives you what, like 3% or something right now?
No, okay, let me
And
give you a
yeah.
shocker here. So I actually give props to anyone who has like a 1.5, 2%, 3% on their checkings and savings account. My savings account was doing freaking 0.05%.
Why was it so low? Is it because it's like during COVID or like
No, I've had
no?
that thing for years. And it was so funny because I'd feel so proud of myself every single month making $20.
Yeah.
And, I was like, man, I feel like I'm making bank.
Yeah.
Had I known that I could put my money into something like a high interest savings account, at least for like the minimum, then I would be making so much more. But it's all perspective now. It's an experience that I have. So it's really easy for me to go tell other people.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, yo, how's your bank doing? No, but like really check.
Well, I know today we will be chatting more about life insurance. But before we do, let's learn more about you even more and
Okay.
see, ask you. I love asking like Asian questions and preferences.
I am Asian.
So let's just start with like, like, how Asians we have like steamed buns?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite or a go-to for steamed buns?
So I'm really plain, but I feel like simple is the best. So I love like the simple white mantao.
Okay, so like with no fillings inside.
No fillings. I love taking that and dipping it in condensed milk.
Oh, okay. So it has is it okay if it's like steamed or it has to be like deep fried?
No, steamed.
Oh, steamed. Oh, okay.
I like
Steamed with the milk condensed.
Yep.
Condensed milk. Okay.
Yep.
How about growing up? Like any Asian cartoons that you enjoy watching?
Oh yeah, of course. I grew up with well, I guess this was like later on, so I was more like a young kid at that time, but it was Sailor Moon,
Oh
Naruto,
yeah.
Inuyasha. Never liked Dragon Ball. It just took like the power-ups just took too long.
Yeah, they charge up for like 2 episodes
I
and they're just
know.
like, ah, like, are
Every
you
single
done yet?
Yeah, every single time I wanted to watch anime, it would always coincide with my dad's hockey games, so he would kick me
Yeah.
out. So if I was to start watching Dragon Ball, I'd like
Mhm.
miss all the stuff,
Yeah.
and every single time I'd watch, it's just power-ups. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
like I can't get into this.
There's one power up where it's like Goku would get the power from the nature.
Yeah, yeah.
And literally it will take like 20 to 30 minutes. Like the flowers will give energy, then
I
the
know.
trees, and then the clouds, and you just like standing there with his hands up, it's like, oh, charge me up. I'm like, why isn't the bad guy, hasn't he killed him yet? Like he's just there standing for 30 minutes.
It's such a prime time for the enemy to kill.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just
The
like
anime
"Sit."
world.
Yeah. um you
Oh.
mentioned Sailor Moon. Do you have a favorite Sailor Moon?
Oh, I always liked Sailor Mars, the red one,
Sailor Mars?
because
Oh.
red is my favorite color.
Oh,
Her
okay.
personality was always very off, though, which I recognize, but I still like the color red.
Yeah. Um, is there a Asian tradition or culture that like you or your family still embrace today?
Hmm. I mean, we go to the temples to pray,
Okay.
but I think even though our family is Buddhist, I don't think we necessarily have anything that we stick to. I feel like our family is a little bit different, where we still have a lot of those Asian ties, but I feel like it's a lot of those mentalities rather than tradition. Because
Hmm.
my background is my family originally came from China. They immigrated to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And so my own parents were born in Vietnam, but they left Vietnam at a really young age. And I'm born here in Canada. So I feel like I'm this modge podge of different cultures that I've absorbed here in Vancouver while still sort of taking things from whatever my parents got. Not that they got much either in terms of culture besides language and food.
Yeah.
Um, so not really any like concrete traditions, just I guess more the mentalities growing up being Asian.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's me too. Like, are you Asian? Are you Canadian? Like, it's
Yeah.
kind of like a mashup. And even if there is a like a tradition, I know like people getting married, they have these like traditions for getting married.
Mm.
Every family has a different view of that type of like a tea ceremony, for example.
Yeah.
There's so many different approaches, and I just feel like there's a like a telephone tag thing with
Yeah.
these Asian cultures that it's just kind of like mixed in with just people just kind of like making it fun to mess with people and then actually like gets implemented.
Yeah, I noticed that. Maybe my family not too much. I think my family is sort of like their weddings are not as extravagant, I guess, how they were in the past. They used to do the tea
Mhm.
ceremonies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now we just do like a dinner, and then
Okay.
like a whole Chinese restaurant, and then
Yeah.
then oh, maybe I will say this: there's always one Hennessy bottle per table. I find at the
Okay.
weddings that we have for family. So I think that's something that I will probably do when I get married is a Hennessy bottle on each
Beige
table.
table.
Yeah.
Nice. I can just view it as like really rowdy party already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the weddings are treated like a family reunion, so everyone sort of comes together and it ends up being like, yeah, it ends up being a party of like
Yeah.
there's a wedding, but
Mhm.
it's a family reunion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you love asking this question to like your team members as
Yeah,
well.
I do.
Rice or noodles?
Oh, yo, I'm team rice. Okay.
Team rice?
I'm
Okay.
team rice. So I know that there's arguments because on a cold winter day, you're gonna crave noodles and all that. And I love me my pasta sauce, like
Yeah.
spaghetti bolognese. But I think about it this way: is like if you had to choose, it's like life or death. You can only eat one thing. I
Okay.
can't survive without rice.
Yeah, that's everyone's, it's like the heartbeat of our lives.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, my
Rice.
sister's used to make mochi.
Oh yeah, there's different ways to cook it, right?
Yeah. And
So
like,
is mochi one of your favorite Asian desserts?
yeah, it's so good. I learned how to make it during the pandemic, and then I freeze it. So I make my own mochi ice cream balls.
Oh, yum.
So
No,
easy. You can totally make
I
it, Nora.
I just came back from Asia and I bought so many like mochis. Like you can just buy one
Yeah.
just off the street. And they have so many different flavors. It was so good. They just don't have it here. Like they try to, like there's the mango, fresh mango mochi.
Yeah,
You can get that at, like maybe Richmond. It's different though.
it's different.
Yeah. Well, let's get into more life insurance.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, tell us more about it. So this, yeah, I'm mortgages. I chat with like other insurance agents as well. But even for me, like I don't quite know much about it. Number one, and number two is I find like people. I know, yeah, I think just people in general, they don't like talking about insurance because it's like, oh, Choi, like
Yeah.
you gotta talk about death or something.
It's like bad omen.
Yeah. So it's really never a good time to talk about it, but the best time is actually when everyone's healthy.
Yeah,
Um, so I guess we're both healthy. We should talk about it.
we are.
So let's just start off with like just kind of like the basics. This insurance 101. What is life insurance?
So I mean, so this is how I like to explain life insurance. I always say it's a tool that everyone can use. The
Mhm.
very basic use, like if you were to like use a hammer to put a nail into a wall, is you have responsibilities, you want to take care of your family, you have a life insurance policy where in case you pass away early, then money goes out to your family. Um, and I would say like that is really the basics of life insurance. You just want to protect whatever current responsibilities you have, whether it's to pay for your mortgage, cars, your family, put groceries on the table, whatever money that you bring in. That is very basic insurance. And I think from there you can kind of go into two separate types: one that is temporary and one that's permanent. And I think this is probably where a lot of people are like, okay, well, I don't know what I have, this and that. And I guess the easiest way to explain it is like temporary insurance, you have it only temporarily, like just for periods of time. Permanent
Usually
insurance,
for how long?
I mean,
Like what are the options?
I think people usually get it for like either 10 or 20 years, and I know some
Okay.
companies will offer it for 30 years.
Okay.
So it really depends on what you get, and obviously like the shorter ones are going to be cheaper than if you were to be covered for a little bit longer. And
Okay.
then if you take a look at, let's say, like a permanent insurance, it's as the name states, it's going to cover you for the rest of your life. So
Okay.
I would say like those are the two main types.
Got it. And I do want to kind of ask a little bit more about insurance. And this is not my opinion, but I have heard, especially people who are like our parents' age, many of them don't have life insurance.
Hmm.
And even though it's a great idea, what you have explained is great. But their mindset is this is too good to be true. What you're telling me that I just pay a certain amount per month and then I get like $1 million payout once I die. that sounds too good to be true. It sounds like a scam, and therefore, and that's the rationale. And therefore, I'm not going to buy it because I don't know if it's going to pay out because I'll be dead by then.
Yep.
So, from your experience, like I'm sure your clients will have gone through this unfortunate event where a loved one has passed away. What is the actual process, and what would that look like? So share with us without us actually passing away to actually like experience this. What actually goes on behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
how quickly do they actually get the money?
So, I mean, relatively, that's a really good question because I think obviously that's like a big unknown.
Mhm.
I've done a death policy already, or like I've
Yeah.
had to give money to a family. And I mean, obviously the very first step is like if you have a policy and the person who is insured, unfortunately passes away, then
Mhm.
you want to notify their advisor, the person who set up their policy. That way, that person can actually contact the insurance company because in that process, you're grieving. Let's say you're a relative or the beneficiary, you're grieving. You're number one going through all these big emotions, like you're suffering a loss. Um, you know, if anything happens and let's say this person was young and you have a family with them, then you're going to be worried about, okay, what's going to happen financially? What am I going to do about the funeral? How am I going to maintain these payments and all that kind of stuff? Oh my gosh, I still have to go to work. Maybe I'm going to have to take time off. It's all these complex emotions that are coming in. I think that's where making sure to be like, hey, advisor person, like, this is what happened. Obviously, people are going to be crying. So
Yeah.
that's an emotion. But I think one thing is definitely to let us know. I know for me, I try to be very empathetic and I try to understand their situation. I try to make the process as easy as possible. So I say, hey, thank you for letting me know. I'll just need the death certificate. And that way it'll help process the claim.
Mhm.
And at that time, I'll schedule a time where all the beneficiaries can get together. If there's multiple, and I'll have to get signatures, but I can deliver the check to them within a certain period of time. Depends on when I know. But yeah, that would be what that situation looks like. I think in any case that a policy doesn't pay out is probably because um the client actually lied on their application. Like, let's just say you had a pre-existing health condition, but you actually kept it from us when you were doing a medical. Because insurance is all about whether or not you're insurable, right? It's based on your mortality and your morbidity. So if you withhold information, let's say you passed away because of lung cancer, and for some reason you didn't tell us that you used to smoke very heavily, then I think that's something that the insurance company will take a look at and be like, oh, that's very questionable. Another way is if you commit suicide within the first 2 years, then they'll look at it and be like, oh, I think this person
Right.
plan this for this payout. And so it's more those kind of questions. But yeah, I think that's why. Man, such a rough topic.
Yeah. But this is good though. Like, it's good to know because people don't know they pay for something and they
Yeah.
expect a payout, right? So so say everything is kosher, everything is good. Someone does die, unfortunately, and the insurance agent receives a death certificate. So how quickly should the family expect the payout to be received, approximately?
I'm gonna say probably like a few weeks to a month because
Okay,
the insurance company will have to process things, and then I will have to then schedule a time. And I find oftentimes a lot of people get really really busy, um, as they sort of sort out their own family side. So
okay,
whenever they get a time with me, so usually I for me my process would expect that kind of time period.
got it. You mentioned that insurance is a tool as well, and I know you focus on businesses and
Mhm.
also using insurance as a tool. So, what would you say would be the difference when it comes to life insurance for a business owner compared to a personal life insurance?
I would say the differences are just based on your responsibilities and sort of the things that you want to protect. Again, when you think about a family, sort of personal kind of policy, you want to protect your family, you want to make sure that there's money in place of you, you want to make sure your mortgage is paid off and things like that. If you think about it from a business perspective, you can sort of relate similar things. Like, let's say you have loans, obviously you want to pay those off. Maybe you want to have a key person insurance because, let's say for a company, let's say you have a restaurant and you have an executive chef that creates all the dishes. He is the creative behind your restaurant. Maybe he's the reason why you got a 2 Michelin star. I don't know. That person's going to be pretty important to protect in case he were to get sick or pass away or get disabled. So having, let's say, a key person insurance on him would be very important, because if he does get sick, you're probably going to need to hire more staff in place of him. So having that extra financial means to keep your restaurant functioning at the same level, or at least trying as close to, I would say is pretty important. Or even things like a buy-sell agreement. It's basically a contract where, let's say there are 2 or more parties involved in a business, and if someone passes away or exits the company, there's an agreement where their shares can be purchased. But I would say also, if you think about a business, like, why do people get into business? Like, John, why did you get into business?
I got into business because I don't think anyone would want to hire me. I'm not employable. So I'm like, okay, let's create my own business. No, well, on top of that, I mean, I think I have lots of um skills when it comes to mortgages and also financial planning as well. So it just end up my role it is a business for self role. It's commission based, and that's how I got into it.
That was not the answer I was expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So glad you I'm so glad you could employ yourself. I mean, I would say, like, I think a lot of people get into business maybe because they can't find any employment. So they'll need to find some sort of way to make money. And I think that's the end goal, is to make money. And I think when people make money, it's always wondering what to do with those assets, what to do when you have all this, and how do I keep as much of it as possible. And that's why I think I a lot of the businesses and sole proprietors that I've worked with, they will be really good at, doing the whole money making thing. They'll be really good at, making sure they have people coming through the doors, purchasing their products and services, and, just continually moving up that way. And I think a lot of people will think of other ways to then expand that money. Again, it's that how to make money work, which is why, in a place like Vancouver, extremely real estate heavy. And I don't fight the current. I think purchasing real estate is great. I think, building out your portfolio is amazing. But when you build all those assets, you have to think about things like passive income versus active income, things like your taxation, um, and especially when you're incorporated. So having those factors sort of in place, that's where you want to think, okay, well, where can I really handle it? And what if you could, let's say, insure those assets that you have? I think those are the questions that I like asking for business owners. So
Mhm. Yeah. You mentioned like how business owners they're specialized. Like you're specialized in insurance and finances. For me, I'm specialized in mortgages. And in your example, they specialize in making rice for you, right? But running a business is not just making rice. Like there's just so much more to it. And I think one thing we touched on prior to recording this is that it's important to also have a team
mm,
to really back up your business.
yeah.
So, what kind of team do you think a business requires for it to be truly successful?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said before, like when you start a business, you're going to be really good at the thing that makes you money, which is probably why you started business. If it's in restaurants, it's probably making food. If it's if it's like being a doctor, you're really good at being a doctor. I would hope so.
Yeah.
Just things like that. And usually, oftentimes, the financial things are going to be in the background, because that's not a lot of people's specialty. And so when I started working with a lot of businesses, I was having all these different kind of conversations with tax professionals, different from just a regular accountant, by the way. Um, Corporate lawyers and all these kind of people that are very necessary when you are, having your corporation. So I actually got this when I had a meeting with one of the accountants I work very closely with. And he was like, when I do the tax filing, during tax season, I have so many people that ask me what to do with their money. And I just tell them like, I don't know, because all I see in your company is the flow of money. I see your money coming in, I see where it exits, and all I try to do is optimize your taxes and I help manage your cash flow. And I think that's when it really clued in. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe that's why there's all these different roles. But for clients, they don't necessarily see that. They just see the one person. They're like, okay, you're going to be my one and only like whole house that I come to for everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's the misconception that I aim to educate people on. You want your corporate lawyer to help structure your business, help structure your corporation. And then you'll have your accountant, obviously, they're going to manage your cash flow, make sure that money goes in and out smoothly, as well as your taxation. But then again, you're going to be left with all these assets that you're going to continue to build on. And at the end of the day, like, same thing with every single person, whether you're in business or you work at a job, is that you're going to eventually want to retire. You're going to want to live life the way you want to, whether it's travel a bunch or make sure that you have ample time with your family. And so it's how to actually utilize those assets that you've built in a way where you are tax efficient. And one of those ways is to understand, okay, well, what what areas and what vehicles can I use that's going to allow me that tax efficiency? And so it's just taking time to like understand those roles and who to talk to. Again, like I meet so many people that don't have one, more, or all the roles, and that's where I direct them. And it's the
Mhm.
same thing, like as I meet a mortgage professional like yourself, I'll be like, you want a banging real estate portfolio? I got someone for you. And
Yeah.
it's just knowing people, right? Your network. So I would say that's the core team. And then obviously you just want to build out for whatever people need. Yeah, for a business, I think that's pretty important.
Got it. Um, I just want to get into a little bit more practical. And I know every client is different, every situation is different. But can you just share a story, like a success story of you meeting with a business owner and implementing a certain strategy that really elevated their business?
I don't know if it would be like exactly a success story per se, because I feel like no one's died yet.
Oh, okay.
No one's died yet. So like even myself have not really experienced that end goal, which I think is good. It's
Okay.
great. But I think one thing that I see people see now is, as I said before, there's permanent insurance, right? So another thing with permanent insurance that not a lot of people will fully understand is that you have the ability to build assets inside of them,
Mhm.
tax-free investments, obviously, if you do them right. Um, and how I like to explain it very simply is like your life insurance policy, a permanent one, is like an umbrella. So obviously, when you open that umbrella, what's the function of it? Protects you from the rain or whatever thing you're
Mhm.
trying to protect yourself from. And let's say all those things that you're protecting yourself from are taxes. You have a dried area underneath, which is the function of an umbrella, and that's what tax shelters your investments. So that's the dry spot that a lot of people want. And that's why on the personal side, I say, once you've maximized your TFSAs, why not utilize a space like that? Obviously, it's very important to have life insurance, but if you're also able to build assets tax free inside there, why not? And that's why I say it's not limited to just personal, it's really for anyone to use. It's just how you develop that strategy. Um, I would say is pretty important to understand. Um, and maybe like another success story And it's not even necessarily about insurance, it's just the education part of it, which I think is extremely key. Is, there's clients that I've met who don't necessarily understand how much to pay themselves, and they end up paying themselves a salary of like 150K, which means they pay a
Wow.
ton in personal taxes.
Yeah.
And it's to go through with them sort of what their expenses look like, and sort of to help them understand their budgeting, also their cash flow, where they can really optimize, and then to take a look at the assets. And that's where I really work with an accountant to say, like, hey, if you're paying yourself a salary, why don't you take a look at, you know, um, doing a mix. Maybe you can do a mix between a salary and a dividend to see where you can save in taxes. And I have someone to refer you. So I would say even stories like that I find are success stories to me, because whatever saves a client money, I always say pay your taxes, okay? Don't evade them, but pay your due, what you owe. You don't need to pay more. Um, and I think that's a really key thing. Always talk to your tax professional about anything. Obviously, I'm not licensed to do so, but I would say, like, definitely understand financially your positioning, and how you can better improve. Let's just say that.
Got it. Okay. Going back to life insurance, there may be some misconceptions about
Mhm.
it. What have you heard, and what are the things that you want to clear up for people?
Well, I think a lot of people doubt life insurance. They think they don't need it um,
Mhm.
when they're younger, or they think it's not going to pay out, as we talked about before. I think a lot, but the biggest misconception that I find is not needing it when I meet people who are younger. For me personally, I actually had my very first insurance policy when I was like 6 or something like that. My mom got one for me from Sun Life. Yep. And I mean, it's not a big policy. I think I'm covered for like $50,000 in there, but at least my mom knew, like, okay, my kids are really young. Okay. They're they're healthy right now. And luckily we're all girls, so girls are actually cheaper than men. Unfortunately. So she got a policy on all four of us, me and my three sisters. And I still have that policy to this day. I'm almost 30 years old, and I know how much money is sitting in there. And I think the other thing is, I then got a policy when I was another one when I was 21. This time was a universal life policy covering me for 800,000. And I've now had that policy for almost 10 years. And the amount of money that I've been able to build up in there, and it's one of those things that is long term, right? You set and forget. Like, I look at the money that I have in there now, and I'm like, this is great. Like, I have
And
extra
this
money.
policy, you decided to get it, or your parents got it for
No,
you? Okay.
I funded
You okay.
myself.
Got it.
So I decided to get myself another policy. I think it was 2 years ago, for another $1 million. Only because I saw the value, and I realized, like, I'm not getting younger. I will always age. And I think my health conditions, I will never know. I have no idea. So so long as I'm healthy and young, if I can qualify for the maximum coverage that I can, and get as much permanent insurance where I have the ability to put money to build assets in there, why not? Because I've already maxed out my TFSAs. And for me, like, I don't need an RSP, because my business already helps me, like, maintain a lot of my taxation. My taxation is very, very low. And what else is there realistically that I can put my money into? An FHSA, and then an open non-registered account. And for me, I'm like, well, I want to put my money into a place that's going to be as tax advantaged as possible. So that's why I wanted more insurance. I wanted to make sure that I can put money into areas that I don't have to pay a bunch of capital gains to, or something like that. So I would say that's the biggest misconception, is that people think, oh, I'm young, nothing's going to happen to me. Or like, oh, my kid is only like 1 or 2 or 5 years old, they don't need it. I think if anything, kids will benefit for it the most, because eventually they're going to grow up and be, adults like us that are going to have responsibilities to take care of. But instead of, paying like $200, $300 a month for the kind of policy that I have, if they can pay like $150 into there and pay for only 20 years, and then by the time, let's say they're like 65, they've got a bunch of money in there. Like, I think that would be really great. Obviously, it depends, what the situation is and illustration wise, but man, like if you can set your kids up for success, like why not? And it doesn't even cost much for you. Um, yeah, I think those are the kind of things that I look at, and I'm like, why not though? Why not take the time to fully understand what it is and what you can do, and then go from there?
Mhm. No, that's really good. Really good advice, and yeah, just encouraging anyone who is listening to this to have a chat with insurance specialist or Joey, just to get a better understanding of what it is, because it is an investment tool,
Mhm.
and definitely just to learn more about it, I think it's going to be a big step for your finances. Now we're just closing to the end of the episode. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the listeners, that we haven't really covered, or anything you should tell your clients and they'll be like, oh wow, I never thought of that.
What I would tell my clients. I mean, obviously, I appreciate them. I think I'm very fortunate because for me, I've always, again, I think education is extremely important and taking the time to understand before doing anything. Um, so I mean, when I actually meet with people, I don't charge for my services and I don't charge for my time. I try to do things as holistically as possible. So, covering things like even getting out of debt. Why don't we optimize strategies to make sure that you get out of debt quicker and you pay less, in terms of interest, or things like building up an emergency fund, I think is so important. Or even things like, creating a will and power of attorney. For me, yeah, I definitely focus on insurance, I think is a big thing, but I think holistically as an entire foundation that people need to build is to understand all those little steps that um, really set people up for financial independence. I think it's so important for people to really take the time to think, okay, well, how can I, like, where do I want to be in the future? What are my personal goals? Because everyone is going to be extremely different. Like the things that I want are going to be different from you, right, John? And it's going to
Mhm.
be different from every single person that's listening. And so once you decide what goals you want, when you want to retire, how much do you want per month? Do you want to purchase a home? Where do you want to purchase this home? Um, all those kind of things. Do you want to travel every year? Do you want a family? Those will really help build out the sort of end goal. And then you really need to take a look at, well, where are you right now and how much money do you have left over every single month after your income minus your expenses. And from there, you know what I do is actually work on building a bridge from A to B. And I think that's where, the insurance comes in, which is only one factor. And I think when people sort of see, I think for me, the personal success story is when people actually see that they are capable of hitting their goals. They're capable of getting to the place that they want to be at. And I think that's the really beautiful thing. And then to continually work with clients every single year to see how their situations have improved over time, I think is really nice. And people will feel it themselves too. They'll feel a lot more alleviated. They'll feel more relaxed. And every single year, it's that kind of thing where it's like, okay, I really think I can get to my goals. I really am saving a lot more money. Oh, I think I want to up where I'm putting my money into here. Oh, I understand how to invest. I understand what to do with my money. So, Joey, I think I want to do it right now when the market's down. Just things like that make me feel so happy. And it's interesting stories like this too. I think, um, you know, when you do a review with a client and you see that their emergency fund in their bank account is like unusually larger, and then you go and you talk and you're like, hey, what's going on? And then you find out like, oh, gonna propose. And I'm like, oh, this is so
Ah,
exciting. So seeing all those like life goals that you work on with clients, and it doesn't matter if it's a person that's on the personal side or on the business side, is that everyone has goals. And to witness it as they go through that journey is so amazing, and it's so much fun to see. So yeah, I just appreciate people who take the time to learn. I think
Yeah.
is first and foremost.
And I can really sense your passion towards it as well. So for those who are looking for someone who is passionate about insurance and finances and looking to speak to you, what's the best way to contact you?
I actually have a webpage that they can always reach me at, but I have my contact information that I think we can put down somewhere where people can reach me. They can reach me through email or my phone. I think that's good. Happy to meet.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was great chatting with you. Learned so much about you personally and your business as well. Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too. Thank you for having me. This has been very fun. Very, very fun.
Amazing. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider giving us a review and subscribing to our podcast on your favorite platform. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Asian Connection Mortgage Podcast.